listening to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, where women who are ready to expand their life adventure discover the tools to stop playing small and tap into the courage required to enjoy their second wind. Welcome.
Good afternoon to whoever is out there listening. I love knowing that you're there and that you're here for this important message that we're going to talk about today. You know, one of the reasons I did Second Wind was because of my own transition. And I felt I needed the community, the support that we all need when we make major changes in our life. Whether we decide to do them or life decides for us to do them, there are still major changes that need a community to support you and connections to help you build your future. So I do that by giving you examples from other women that have gone through major transitions in their life. And so today we have a guest that has also been through a transition that she definitely would not have chosen to go through, but she faced it and she's going through it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her before she comes on, so you'll be so impressed that she's here. Laura Stack. Well, Laura Stack was best known in the business world for a professional moniker, the Productivity Pro. Her 30-year career as a keynote speaker, best-selling author of 8 productivity books, and corporate spokesperson came to a screeching halt on November 20th, 2019, when her 19-year-old son, Johnny, died by accident after becoming psychotic from dabbing high-THC marijuana concentrates. Laura responded by forming the nonprofit Johnny's Ambassadors to educate parents and teachers about the dangers of today's high-THC marijuana on adolescent brain development and mental health and suicide. Now, she has written a book, The Dangerous Truth About Today's Marijuana, Johnny Stack's Life and Death. But Laura is described as a force of nature with unstoppable drive and unwavering purpose. Laura is determined to get teens to stop dabbing. So welcome, Laura. It's so good to have you here.
I appreciate that, Joyce, and the very kind introduction. I did want to clarify one thing, that Johnny's death was not an accident. Sadly, he killed himself. He died by suicide. So when we lost our son, we formed our nonprofit in response because he was very addicted to marijuana where we live in Colorado. And so many people think it's completely harmless for teens. So we were thrilled to be in the New York Times yesterday. We've been in Wall Street Journal, People Magazine. Wow. We're really working hard to get the word out. But yes, I did want to say that Johnny's death, I don't believe, was an accident. There is a video of him that I will never watch, but it did capture his death. And in his psychosis, we do believe that he did not mean to die, but we think that it definitely was not an accident.
Right. Yeah. I have a son who also had, I knew he dabbled in marijuana, but I knew nothing about how much. So, that was so many years ago. Is this type of marijuana that you're talking about today, that's totally different from
15
years ago.
Right? Oh, yes. No, these products didn't even exist a few years ago. So I think many people like us, I'm 53. I used marijuana when I was in high school. I didn't like it. I didn't care for it much. I didn't use it after that, but I do remember being at a party, maybe 16, 17 years old, and someone having, these little papers, and they put some grass in it and rolled it up in a joint, and we all kind of passed it around. I remember everybody just kind of giggling, and we went to Denny's like that. I don't know why I remember we went to Denny's, but that was my experience, I think, Joyce, with marijuana. So when Johnny in 2014 was 14 years old, he was a freshman in high school. I wasn't involved in the marijuana industry, right? I hadn't been keeping up with it. I mean, I haven't been involved in its use. So when he came home from a party and he told us that marijuana was at the party, his friend's brother at the time was 18 and had a medical marijuana card, which a lot of the kids get, it's a party drug. There's nothing wrong with them. They just go tell the pop doc they have a migraine or whatever. They get a card, they go to the dispensaries, and then they go to parties and they sell it to the younger kids. So, I mean, that's what happened. And Johnny repeated that cycle. He got a med card and was the local high school drug dealer too when he was 18, but he came home, and I remember thinking to myself in my head when he said, Mom, that, there was marijuana there, because of course we didn't allow it. We said, no drinking, no drugs, no smoking, just like any other parent would. We told him it would ruin his brain cells. And that's how little we knew.
Yeah.
And, he said he used marijuana, and in my head, I didn't say it to him, but in my head, I said, well, thank God it's just weed, right? I said, I used it.
Yep.
It's fine. It didn't hurt me. And I kind of, not understanding, Joyce, that this whole new world of concentrates and dabs and waxes and shatters and vapes and crystals and suppositories and tampons and inhalants and cookies and candy. I didn't know all of this had grown around. I didn't know what dabbing was. I thought that was like the move.
I wanted to ask you what it is.
Oh, okay. So
what is it?
I didn't know what it is either. And it was just a year before my son died before I even understood what it really was. Well, what they do, here's the easiest way to think about it. They create these machines, they're called extractors, and they load up the plant. Okay. So you take your marijuana plant that has the THC in it, tetrahydrocannabinol, and the goal is to remove just the chemical out of the plant. Okay. So you want to just extract the part that makes you high and just use that. Okay. So that's the easiest way to think about it. Toss the plant. In other words, there's no organic matter. We just want to suck out the juice, the THC. So then they take that THC and they have to use a solvent to get it out. They use like butane or ethanol or propane. And when you run a solvent through the marijuana plant, it breaks off what are called trichomes on the plant that store the cannabinoid THC, and it filters into the machine. They toss the plant, and then they take that product, which in its raw form is sometimes called butane hash oil, like wax. Some of it looks like a brown earwax or a beeswax. And then they further process it or distill it, right? Just like how you can take alcohol like 5 times distilled, right? And you're making it more and more and more pure. So that's what they do with the THC. So now, instead of when I was growing up, the plant, when you smoked it, you were getting between 2 and 5% per gram of THC, right? Now you can have vapes, shatters, waxes, all the chemical products of THC that are 80, 90, almost 100% raw THC. No. Yeah, this is not cannabis, right? This is not. Now, the thing is, a lot of people go, oh, I don't do the concentrates. I'm just using the weed. Well, even the weed is stronger. Now they've cultivated the plant itself. So average marijuana is about 20% THC. I can walk into a dispensary right down the road here and buy 25, 35% weed. Okay. So we're talking just the flower has been cultivated so that it's stronger and stronger and stronger, right? The marijuana industry responded to people's desire to want higher potency marijuana, and they complied, and you know, they wanted to be profitable. It's a multi-billions of dollars, you know, industry. So you have high potency weed, you have nearly pure THC concentrates, and that's what Johnny was using. He was dabbing, he was using wax, he was using vapes, and the marijuana industry wants to try to addict the kids really young. I don't know how young your son was, but between the age of 18. Okay, mine started at 14 and died at 19. So in 5 years, it was literally a journey through hell from that one time, right? And then trying to get him through treatments, through programs, psychiatrists, I mean, you name it, 3 mental hospitals. And he became at the end so delusional and paranoid from these products. He thought the mob was after him. He said the FBI was chasing him. He just had all these, and, you know, and you try to tell him that's just not true, son, right? But his mind had become so affected by this marijuana, and they have research studies to prove it. We know from MRIs that THC in the teen brain changes the structure of the prefrontal cortex. You have a thinning. It changes the way your brain forms. So your brain is formed, my brain is formed, right? We don't, and before, when it was not so potent, we didn't see addiction. We didn't see psychosis. We didn't see suicidality, because it wasn't that strong of a dose. Right. But now it's just off the chart. How many milligrams of THC these kids are getting in these crazy products. It's just apples and oranges, Joyce.
Is that separate from vaping?
Well, they can vape the oils. So vaping, what you're thinking of is like Juul, right? So that's nicotine. That's like cigarettes. That's nicotine. We're talking about vaping THC oils that are psychoactive, right? That's a very different thing. I mean, nicotine's not good for you. I'm not saying, oh yeah, it's better. One's better, right? They're all bad. And nicotine is extremely addictive. And of course, now Juul's been outlawed because we see the youth vaping epidemic. And that's a good start. I mean, that's going to go a long way and eventually, hopefully, taking away the vaping from THC. Yeah. But, you know, when teens go, oh, mom, you know, I'm just vaping. They could be using nearly pure THC oils right under your nose. They don't have a smell. They're easy to disguise. They look like Juuls. They have they have little cartridges that you buy. The teens deal them. You know, whoever's 18 goes to the dispensary, buys it, sells it to their friends. It's real easy to do. There are 3,500 Colorado teens with medical marijuana cards, and they have no medical issues. It's just a party drug.
But the teens don't do the process of turning it into the oils.
No, they buy it legally in the dispensary from the manufacturers.
No.
Oh yeah, this is not black market stuff. This is not illegal. You go to a pot shop doc, you tell them you got a migraine, you pay your $200, you go to the dispensary, you show them your card, and you walk out legally buying shatter, you know, sugar, resin, wax, whatever you want, with almost 100% potency, and then they ruin their brains. It's great. It's fantastic.
How far was Johnny into the drug before you knew that he had really delved into it, or that it was affecting him?
I mean, I was a teen. I hid stuff. He hid it. He was really good at hiding it. He had, you know, his group of friends really enjoyed the marijuana when they started using it. I didn't notice really. I mean, I did find some pipes and smashed them, threw them away, all that, you know, grounded him, and, you know, all the things you would do. But again,
I went crazy for a couple of days. I went crazy.
I mean, you know, grounded, no car. I mean, the whole thing, you know, but we still didn't understand We didn't even, I'm still thinking weed, right? In my
Mhm.
head, like my
Mhm.
weed. So it was really a couple years. We noticed when he was maybe 16 and a half, we started seeing some mood changes. He started like pulling away from activities that he was a very busy young man, very involved in church. He had a 4.0 GPA. He got a perfect SAT score in math. He was
Oh
brilliant.
my
100 out of
goodness.
800. Yeah. And it just slowly started taking him away, losing motivation, irritable. I mean, and it's tricky because teen boys are irritable anyway, right? And
Right.
hormonal and
Mhm.
sleeping all the time. But he got defiant, and really when he was a senior, right before his senior year, I think, and in my book, I wrote about this. I call it the unraveling. He really fell apart. I mean, verbal abuse, calling, he would call me names, F you, it was awful.
Yeah.
And it wasn't him. I mean, and he was just the sweetest, most wonderful kid before that. So it did really take a few years. Now, it doesn't have to. Some kids hit these dabs and take way too high of a dose. We have several doctors on our scientific advisory board for our nonprofit. One is Dr. Karen Randall. She's an emergency room physician in Pueblo. And she says every day there are teens in her emergency room with acute intoxication. You can absolutely overdose. You can't stop breathing because there's no cannabinoid receptor in your brainstem, but you can overdose and you can have acute psychotic incidents. You can have comas. She sees vomiting. People come in with heart palpitations, not breathing. It's really bad because teens don't know how strong it is, right? They're not experienced users. They're not adults. They don't have the decision-making ability. Their prefrontal cortex isn't formed. So they're already very risky behaviors.
Yeah.
It causes them extreme problems.
Yeah. Well, I know that it talks about in the materials that I got that you became, after his death, that you became really convinced that you would change this, almost like it was my mission. This is my new direction. And how did you do? Is it you, or is it you and your husband, or are you the force behind this?
I'm definitely the force behind this. I would say my husband took another, year longer than I did to heal. I get angry. I was, after Johnny died, I was in bed for like 6 months. I was in the fetal position. I mean, I was just a wreck, as you can imagine. So many things. I think I was a good mom. I wasn't a perfect parent, but you still blame yourself, even though I couldn't do anything about it. I was in bed, he didn't tell me. I didn't know he was suicidal. I didn't make him use the marijuana. I didn't push him off the roof. It ultimately was a very good kid who made some really poor decisions. And he is responsible. I mean, he sacrificed his life ultimately for his choice to use this drug. But obviously, I'm very angry that it was even available to him. That he could even, at 18, he had no medical issues at all, no mental health issues. He was never depressed, never anxious. We don't have psychosis in our family. Like, I know 100% for sure he would still be with me if it weren't for marijuana. And I woke up one day and I just, instead of being sad, I was pissed, and I'm like, how can this even happen? How can you go from this wonderful young man until his death? And what is this stuff, and I decided to research it. And I put one little post on Facebook and it just said, hey, have you ever heard of dabbing? I wasn't aware of this and, thought other parents might want to know. And I put a couple links, and Joyce, it got 21,000 shares. I know, it was insane. I mean, and I've been a professional speaker for 30 years and I've been trying to do something like that. And I couldn't even do that trying. Right. I mean, and 5,000 comments. And you know what everyone said? I have no idea what you're talking about. That was like the biggest kind of theme running through it. And I knew then I'm onto something, because here I lost my son and am completely uneducated. And there have to be thousands, and there are. I mean, the community just came because there was nothing available for me, because everybody's like, oh, you can't be addicted to marijuana, and the doctors diagnosed him. His diagnosis was THC abuse severe. That was his diagnosis when he was all paranoid and, had to go to the mental hospital because he thought people were after him.
Yeah.
So it's coming into its own. We've been working on this now for 2 years. I started the nonprofit. When that happened, I felt like, you know what? This was my mission all along. And I didn't know it, and I didn't want it. And it became very obvious, and the path was just opened for me. I mean, doors have been opened. Things have been very easy. I haven't really had to try. Now, granted, I did have a 30-year business background, so it was easy for me to start the nonprofit. I know events, I know branding, I know media, I know all of that. And so that piece was easy. I wrote a book, and just literally turned 180 degrees. And instead of speaking about productivity, which was my expertise before, I just started talking at drug prevention conferences, schools. I speak to teens. I talk with parents. I speak to law enforcement. I'm still speaking, writing, training, educating, right? All the things that I love and that I'm good at. I just changed focus. I just did a flip the switch and changed lanes. And I am probably just as busy, if not more so than now, than I was working in the nonprofit, traveling around. And my husband slowly healed and joined me. He is, I'm the only employee of our nonprofit. I'm the founder, CEO, kind of function as the executive director. He's the chairman and the treasurer, and our 2 grown children are on our board as well. And then we have some non-stack family members, to kind of round things out. But now we're all very engaged. My husband handles all of our travel and all of our projects and kind of does all the operations. So he's an unsung hero. He's kind of working behind the scenes as a volunteer. But now, it was me.
How does a school or a parent find out more about you? I know they can go to your website.
Well, so, we take donations just like any nonprofit.
Like all
and the donations run our operations, right?
Wow.
Our, platforms that our curriculum run on, my salary, website, administrative expenses, that kind of stuff. And then organizations who want to hire me, they have a separate program fee that our nonprofit charges for my speaking. And that goes to Johnny's ambassadors. I'm on a salary, and that's how we get our funding, because we don't have grants or government money or anything like that. And, parents support us. So, we get $100 and we're really thrilled for that, for the donation. But, it takes 3 days off my calendar when I go do speaking engagements. So the organizations do pay. And so it's typically through a drug-free coalition in the neighborhood. The city has a drug-free coalition, and they have grants from the Office of National Drug Control Policy. They have grants for their coalition to bring me in. So they bring me in, and then it's usually, I'll do a middle school, go talk to the 8th graders, an assembly at the high school, go speak to the high schoolers. And then usually a community night, or a parent night in the evening, that kind of thing. So once I'm out there, I kind of try to do several different events that day, but it's all initiated usually by the school, the conference, the nonprofit, or the coalition.
Yeah. Well, I've led a nonprofit for 20 plus years. and it's a children's museum. So,
Wonderful.
but I think you wouldn't speak there.
Well, if I would,
Other
yeah.
than a space,
And-
it would be space you could speak in.
Yeah. So if I work at a children's museum, a lot of people find a venue where, you can put 100 people in it. They put up a community event. They do a flyer. They send it out to the PTOs, the parent teacher organizations, and have an event, so I've been to some where they've got a couple hundred people that they've gathered. So that's an example of a good location. But yeah, if you had, especially if there were teens, that's my biggest satisfaction, is to be in front of 500 teenagers. And, I don't ever use scare tactics, or, I don't want to make them sad. That's not my goal. It's not drugs are bad. Don't do drugs, so it's more of a, hey, I want to just share some really important information with you. And I hope you will listen to the story of what happened to my son. I don't dwell on it, but I use it as an opportunity to educate them. I talk to them, why do people say don't use marijuana? What exactly happens to your brain? How does THC interfere? Why is being young detrimental, right? And we talk about potency and brain development and mental health and what happens when marijuana is legalized, and what does it mean to be, quote, medicine? What does FDA approval look like? And, so I teach them.
Yeah. Right.
Instead of just say no, I use just say no, KNOW. They need to know this information. It's all about education. It's like, look, when you go out there, you're going to be at a party and someone's going to hand you a vape and say, here, hit this. This is what happened to my son. And what are you going to say? How are you going to respond? Johnny didn't know what to do. He took it and he hit it. And it's very easy to get addicted to these substances.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think most parents would be shocked to know that their teenager is doing vaping or what are
if they're dabbing,
yes.
vaping, using edibles, and so many are just totally head in the sand. My kid would never do that. They're so this or that, or he's an athlete, or he's a scholar, or goes to church, or just the craziest things I hear. And meanwhile, their kids are hardcore addicted to marijuana, and they don't even know it. It's easy to hide. You can't smell it. It's parents really, I think, have their head in the sand these days.
Yeah. So how do you bring it into a community if you do have, I believe the family unit is just crumbling at its foundation these days. We're way too busy. We're not involved enough with our kids, nor do we even have family events. But I think it's really hard to stay in touch with the life that your children are experiencing.
Yeah. And especially once they hit driving age, you're tired. I have 3 kids, your kids are 16, you want to give them a little independence, and, they're driving, they're trying to stretch their wings, and it's really hard to balance what's hovering, what's letting them learn to be independent. And I think people stop parenting too soon these days,
Oh, I agree.
You have to still, and I say this because I didn't do a good job of it. I didn't track Johnny as well as I should have. I stopped asking, where are you going? Who are you with? Is the mom, dad home? Do they allow marijuana? Because and this is not an excuse. It's my explanation why, because I didn't know. I was completely ignorant. And I am just so determined that parents are not ignorant anymore, that they need to be educated. They need to get their head out of the sand. This is the biggest party drug. It's more prevalent than alcohol. It's easier to get than alcohol, because alcohol, you got to be 21.
Right.
Here, you only have to be 18. The high school down the road, I talk to these teens all the time. In 5 minutes, they can get weed. They know who has the med cards. It's being dealt in the school, and it's more prevalent than people realize. And We just had our Healthy Kids Colorado survey, and from 2019 to 2021, there is a statistically significant increase in the THC vaping. The flower, the smoking continues to fall, but all these high potency uses are going up. So we have to get educated ourselves as parents. We have to go to a dispensary. If you have not been on a field trip to a dispensary in 5 years, you will fall over when you walk in and see the drops, the elixirs, the food, the drinks, the crazy THC products that are available. That is marijuana. And you have to get over your old mindset around what it was when you were a kid. And it's extremely toxic now for our youth. And then go talk to your kid, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, whoever, you know. Hey, have you heard of this dabbing stuff? Most teens know more than the parents do about all these new marijuana products.
Now, I don't know if you can do this, but are there different parts of the United States that you seem to be called into more than others?
Yeah, East Coast, because it's all new there, right? In Colorado, it's been legal for 10 years recreationally, 20 years medically. So it's so polarizing here. People, it's just so normal. Yeah, you know, so we really get called in where it's brand new, legalized. New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, you know, where it wasn't as accessible, and now all of a sudden it is accessible.
So you are spending a lot of time in the East Coast.
Yeah.
I bet. Oh, but there's a big world in between the Colorado and the East Coast.
Well, you know, on the West Coast, it's been legal for so long. California, Washington, Colorado, you know, they're just, it's a different mindset, and it's really hard to overcome. Strangely, I don't get invited to speak in Colorado schools. It's too political, and too many parents are using, and they don't want their kids to think that anything that they're doing is wrong. And of course, we know that if a parent uses marijuana, their child is 80% more likely to be a user himself or herself. And so you're inadvertently causing harm in your child's brain, but you don't think so because you've been snowed by the industry that, oh, it's legal, it's safe, it's natural, it's hard. It's like none of these things grow out of the ground. That there, you know, there's no organic, this is no resemblance to the ditchweed, you know, 100 years ago that people used to. The Woodstock weed, you can't even buy that anymore. It just, it doesn't even exist.
Really?
You know, so no, the potency is way too high. It's been cultivated, and everybody kind of wanted, I think the baby boomers wanted that nice, you know, love and giggle and smoke 5% THC weed. You can't get it. It botanically doesn't exist in nature anymore.
Oh, at all. Well, I was looking at some of the things that you have created in your nonprofit. You've got the platforms for education, awareness, and prevention curriculum for parents. You do drug prevention conferences, community groups, and schools.
Yes. We have online self-paced marijuana education for teens and a parallel track for parents. We have PowerPoint shows. We certify Johnny's Ambassadors trainers to go into the community and teach themselves, because I can't be everywhere at one time. We have one sheets in a magazine format, a youth marijuana prevention magazine that teachers can use in the classroom. I mean, social media campaigns, graphics, videos, toolkits. We have that's what we do. We create educational materials that then we give to others. That's why we call them ambassadors, right? So that other people can go out and use them in their schools, in their communities.
Now, Laura, I know that you've been very, very, very active in getting things passed, also in Colorado House. So one of the things that I'd like for you just mention briefly about is the House Bill 1317 that you worked so hard to get passed for the youth of Colorado.
Sure. Yes. Well, since Colorado was the first state to legalize, we decided we'd better be the first state to sound the alarm and push back. And I'm so proud of our legislature, our senators and our representatives, and for getting this done. I first met with the Senate Majority Leader in a backyard of during COVID. And he didn't even know about dabbing and concentrates. And so we had to provide him with a big education. And he said, I just don't even know what you're talking about. And I bet my colleagues don't either. And I had probably 30 one-on-one Zoom calls educating our legislators over that next year. And we put together a coalition. Many people were involved, lobbyists, other marijuana prevention organizations, doctors, schools. And we did 9 hours of testimony in front of Senate, the committees, the House on the floor. And we passed 1317 regulating marijuana concentrates. And it has so far in the year it's been passed, it has decreased the number of medical marijuana cards that 18-year-olds have from 3,500 in December of 2021 till now in April, latest data 2022, 2,700. So a steep decline. We've also seen a huge drop in marijuana sales year over year from April to April. 46%, 26% of that in medical marijuana sales, because it put a real-time tracking system in. Before, people were just going from dispensary to dispensary, buying 40 grams and selling it. Now, 18-year-olds can only buy 2 grams a day, and it's limited and tracked, so they can't buy at more than one dispensary. So it's really cut down. It makes me so happy to think of how less THC products are available in schools now, with the drug dealers like my son sadly not having enough product to sell. It also requires doctors, 2 physicians now, to certify that an 18-year-old has a chronic and debilitating condition, and they require them to pull their mental health and physical records to prove that if they say they have a migraine, that they have had problems with that for years. So it has really worked, and we are hoping other states can learn from how we put this legislation forward, get themselves a coalition, find some bill sponsors, get some lobbyists, and put some guardrails in place to protect their youth also.
Wow. That's amazing that you've been able to do all that. That's big. It's
huge. And John and I were in the photo with Governor Polis, who's a big pot buddy. He's in the back pockets of the marijuana industry here. And he didn't want to sign it, but politically he had to. And he was still spouting lies, even when he signed it, about how it's helping the opioid crisis, which it's not. We have more opioid deaths than ever before. But he signed it, and I am now the proud owner of that pen that he used to sign the legislation. And there's a photo of me holding Johnny's picture in that bill signing. So it's something that we are very proud to have been involved in. And it took a lot of people being willing to open their mouths, tell their story, not be silent, and get this done.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I would like for you to tell us one more time about the book that you created, because if I was experiencing a son or a daughter in this, I'd want to go immediately to you, but I maybe read the book first. So,
well, the book is a great place to start, because that was right after he died. I literally remembered everything then. It's fuzzy. It gets fuzzier as time goes by. You know that. It's a journal. It's a chronological timeline of everything that happened in his life, mostly, of course, focused on the 5 years that he used marijuana. And it has 300 pages, 176 scientific notations. They can read the research, really get educated. They will see their child and their journey in Johnny's story. And it's a way for them to get a fast jump on what's going on with their child. It's available on Amazon. Well, right now it's sold out on Amazon because of the New York Times study or article that just came out. We were in last week, but it will be back. But it is available in Kindle and audio. So that's the best place to get information. The Dangerous Truth About Today's Marijuana, Johnny Stack's Life and Death Story. And if they are in a book club, there are free book club materials on our website that they can download and use that as a book club in their community.
Awesome. Now, the website that they go to find more information, would you give that to us?
Yes, Johnny's with 2 N's and no apostrophes. You can't do that in a URL. So it's grammatically incorrect, but it's Johnny's Ambassadors with 2 S's .org, johnnysambassadors.org. And there are menus there you'll see for education, for resources, for partners, where to get help for your child, how to join. So it's a very simply laid out but powerful website with a lot of educational materials you'll be able to review. And everything we do, almost everything except having me speak, is no charge. That's what we do. We create educational materials for parents, teens, and communities to get the word out.
Yeah. I know you're on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram.
Yes, everywhere.
Everywhere. Do you have any like groups on, I know sometimes they form groups on Facebook and support groups.
Yes, we have, of course, our page on Facebook, but we have a very active prevention group, and that's a public group. Johnny's Ambassadors. Look for youth marijuana prevention. It should come up. There are, 2,200 very active members on that group. And then we have 2 private groups. One is for parents of children who are currently in cannabis-induced psychosis. Sadly, there are 300 parents in that group. And they provide support and resources to each other. That's also a monthly virtual group that we run. And then we do have a group of parents whose children sadly have died from outcomes related to their THC use. Suicides mainly, but also those who started with marijuana and went on to harder drugs and overdosed. So we do have a small group of us and a memorial page for them as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know how to say thank you enough for spreading this, for being such a carrier of the
Yes, please join us. Please join us. We have a newsletter I publish every week. If they go to johnnysambassadors.org/blog, please sign up, put in your email address, keep up with what we're doing. Our new online community has 300 people already, and that's all prevention people. So if you're a counselor in a coalition work, in drug prevention, go to the menu that says community on our website. Please join us there. There are so many ways to engage, and that's why we call them ambassadors, Joyce. We want you to now take the information you've learned and send it and give it to someone else to help them. Any parent who has a child needs to know this. We call it each one, reach one. That's all you need to do to be an ambassador. Share with one other person.
All right. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed having you on Discovery. I've enjoyed having you on Second Wind. It's always important to see how women have been affected so sadly, so tragically, and how we've created something really powerful.
I agree. We have to take something like this and turn it into good. I like to say that we must, as women, forge ahead despite our pain and give meaning to our loss. That is sadly the hardest thing that has ever happened to me, is to lose my son. But at the other end of the spectrum, it is the very best thing that has ever happened, because it's given my life purpose and meaning and a mission. And I think any of us can take our issue and do the same.
Yes. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Joyce.
I really appreciate that you've spent this time with us. Now, if you'll just wait, I want to say something to my listening audience. You know, I'm normally the one at the end that says, now take this and share it. But Laura really helped with that request today by stating, take the information you've learned through this podcast and share it with somebody that you may be totally unaware they need to know this information, because, you know, drugs are kind of a secret thing around a lot of young people. So let's share what you can with your loved ones, with friends that you come in contact. Just share this podcast, and that could be the simple answer. So I look forward to seeing you next week. It's always a pleasure to know that you have tuned in and that we're sharing good information. Have a great week. Have lots of fun, and be thankful that we are here. Thank you for being here today.
Joyce Buford returns next week at the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at joycebufordempowers.com.